Welcome to the Secure Cyber Connect podcast with Jay Adamson and Warren Atkinson, where we're joined by information cybersecurity, technology, and talent acquisition professionals who share their journeys, unique perspectives, and offer advice and guidance.
Our topics on this episode will be leadership and innovation within cybersecurity. Today, we're extremely pleased to be joined by Alex Hudelot and Paul Jackson. Alex is the co-founder and chief security officer at Theos Cyber. With over 15 years of experience within cybersecurity, Alex is a seasoned leader specializing in transformative security solutions, where he drives the company's mission to empower businesses across the APAC region with intelligence-driven, proactive cybersecurity services. Under his leadership, Theos Cyber has established itself as a trusted partner for organizations who are seeking to stay ahead of evolving threats, whilst aligning security strategies within business objectives. His career highlights include serving as the Chief Information Security Officer for a leading cryptocurrency platform and as a Senior Solution Architect at BT Global Services, where he spearheaded large-scale security transformations and implemented effective practical security strategies. Passionate about mentorship and community collaboration, Alex has actively contributed to shaping the next generation of cybersecurity leaders. He holds multiple industry-leading certifications, including CIS, CISM, and PMP, reflecting his commitment to both excellence and continuous professional growth. Paul Jackson is the Chief Executive Officer at Theos Cyber. Paul's a distinguished leader in digital forensics, cyber investigations, and incident response, with over 30 years of experience spanning both public and private sectors. He brings an unparalleled expertise to the forefront of cybersecurity, having previously held pivotal leadership roles at Kroll, JP Chase, and the Hong Kong Police Force. Paul's career achievements include serving as a global head of cyber investigations at JP Morgan and regional managing director of cybersecurity and investigations with Kroll in the APAC regions. He's renowned for his strategic handling of complex investigations, technology fraud, incident threats, and compliance programs, consistently delivering impactful results. As an active member of the global cybersecurity community, Paul's also played key roles in developing international training standards and advancing the field through leadership positions within Interpol and the International Organization of Computer Evidence. Beyond his executive duties, Paul remains dedicated to advancing digital forensics and cybercrime investigation, regularly contributing to industry conferences and publications. Alex, Paul, a very warm welcome to you both to the Secure Cyber Connect podcast, and thank you for joining us. It's great to have you on the episode.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we usually kick things off by asking you guys to provide a very high-level overview of just some of the topics we'll be discussing on this episode. Quite brief, but just a high-level overview.
Sure. Well, I'll start, shall I? And thank you very much for having me on the podcast, guys. I'm very excited to be here. But certainly, from your introduction, you can tell I'm passionate about cybersecurity and my own personal background in the investigation side. So in helping companies recover from incidents, from data breaches, from whatever incident it might be. And I think today we're going to be touching on a lot of the topics related to both responding to incidents as well as protecting organizations from becoming victims in the first place, and strategies, for having the right people in place, for having the right processes, having the right technologies, and general conversation about how companies, organizations, and individuals can be doing this a lot better.
That sounds extremely exciting. And thank you for having me too, gentlemen. So I think on my end, some of the areas that I'd be quite interested to touch on, given my journey and the fact that, I went from working as a cyber professional into starting a cyber services company, I sort of saw, different sides of, career path, building teams, looking for talent. And I'm quite passionate about, helping individuals with their ambitions on, the career path they may consider, how to train themselves, how to progress, the mindset, the approach, and generally the navigating the variety of roles that there are within this really interesting field. And I'm looking forward to share some ideas perhaps.
No, that's brilliant. We're really looking forward to it. And could each of you be kind enough to share with us something that you're perhaps proud of or want to shine a light upon that isn't typically on your LinkedIn?
What I'm really proud of is the fact that, from a very early age, I guess, when I joined the Hong Kong police, I was thrust into a leadership role, right? Because that's the way the police operates. I came in as soon as I graduated, if you like, from the police college. I was in charge of a team of 30 plus guys, 22 years old. And you either learn to sink or swim, right? When you're managing teams, especially in crisis. And I think what I learned along that journey was how to be a good leader, how to look after your people, and how to, generate that sense of belonging in teamwork. And I think what I'm proud of, and I don't really mention it, obviously, on LinkedIn or other places, is that I've kept in touch with most of the people I've worked with throughout working in government, throughout working in big banking, throughout working in consulting. And no matter, which job I've left or departed from, I've kept in touch with all those good people. And that's a sign of, that sense of family, that sense of community. And I'm, really proud that many of them want to come back and work with me again in my new role. So yeah, I take a great sense of pride out of that.
Yeah, I would echo that too. But I think one aspect that I'm sort of kind of proud of is that I took chances throughout my career, whether it was in terms of roles or locations. I'm originally from France. I worked in the UK, then I went to the US, then I went to Hong Kong. And every time I was, I guess, both presented with opportunities, but also looking for opportunities, with some sort of a background plan, so to speak, in my head, as in, for the next couple of years, I want to learn this. So let's go and find a role that's really going to help me gain skills or gain exposure or learn English. And through research and through, reaching out proactively to people, to companies, to leaders, and, deciding I kind of want to work for this company. Let's go and ping these people and see if they have room for me. And I've gone after it, and, more often than not, it actually turned out, to be, extremely interesting and very rewarding experiences. And yeah, it has taken me, somewhere now in Asia, and I would never have thought that, this is where I would end up, or that I would start a company, etc. My dream was, CISO, like many security professionals when we start. I never thought about entrepreneurship and building my own firm. But yeah, I think, one, having a bit of a plan and trying to pursue, constantly the next step and progress and learning things, and then, yeah, creating and seizing opportunities and making the most out of them. I'm quite happy with the way things have turned out, I guess.
No, that's brilliant. And this question pertains to both of you, but first yourself, Alex. What one significant challenge have you faced in your career that's significantly affected your view on cybersecurity and helped you to move into the direction of sort of founder?
Well, interestingly, so I just mentioned one of my sort of career dream and aspiration was to get the big job, the CISO job. And after about 10, 15 years in working with service providers and consulting firms, I got that call that, I was waiting for from a recruiting team for a company looking for a CISO. And, that was one of those times I thought, you know what, maybe this is the time. Let's try and go and do it. And it turns out that actually, I did not quite enjoy that experience, actually. And, I really enjoy working with CISOs and security leaders and helping them. But I never thought that, I never really grasped and really understood what it is to be in that position. And I just, did not quite enjoy that. The fact that, internally, I was now the one trying to, having the responsibility to advocate, to form relationships outside of technology with other towers and other leaders. A lot of education and a lot of sharing, a lot of understanding the business. And that was something I completely underestimated, the importance of that aspect of the job. I wanted technical projects, deployments, etc., putting controls in place. I was very comfortable with this, but the rest of it really struck me. And I guess after this, I sort of decided, I don't think that's for me. Let's just move quickly to something else. And 6 months later, I started Theos. So I guess that's, the example, I guess, when I made a career decision and a move, and I realized quite quickly that this was not the one I should have made. I learned a lot in those 6 months, really a lot. But one of those learnings was that this was not for me. And I'm much, much happier where I am right now.
Yeah, I guess if I look back on my career, I think it was the transition from government, from law enforcement into JP Morgan, right? And I was, not only was that daunting, but soon after I joined JP Morgan in Asia, I was still in Hong Kong, I got promoted, but that part of that promotion was to be global. So I had to move, uproot all my family to New York and take on the role there. And it was an extremely turbulent time for the bank. And, obviously I'm not going to reveal any insights, but, with the public, incidents are there for all to see during that period. And I think navigating that taught me that it's not about yourself, right? It's about the people that you've brought in. It's about the capabilities of those folks. And there's no way we'd have successfully navigated all of those incidents without having had the right people. And I was very privileged. Obviously, JP Morgan's a big brand, so it can attract the best and the brightest. But just having been surrounded by those brilliant people made me realize that it's not about the tech. It's not about, anything else. It's about people. And I think that's driven my career ever since. It's getting the right people and delivering quality, not relying on tools and tech. So, there's a lot of stories I could tell you about those days, but I'm not sure I can on the public forum. But it certainly taught me a hell of a lot about, the need for the right people and trust.
That's brilliant. Appreciate you both sharing.
And segueing in from that and looking at sort of, I guess the fact that we know resilience is not just about, technology, it is about people and looking at some of the key skills of leadership within cyber. Leaders obviously need to develop that mental toughness and adaptability to make the right decisions at the right times in, high pressure situations. What do you both feel are the key skills and character traits that are required to lead and of course succeed within cybersecurity, whether as a CISO or SOC manager or even as an incident response manager, for example?
Well, the obvious, area to start with is the people skills. And, as you mentioned, quite regularly, the nature of the job means that we are faced with high pressure situations. And to some degree, when that's your job and that's what you do sort of day in and day out, I'm not saying we're in crisis every day, but, we see our fair share of situations that, could potentially turn into crisis. It sort of becomes, your normal environment. But for the folks that are on the other side, when it's a client or when it's a new, a team that's facing their first sort of occurrence, it is difficult. It is emotional. And I think individuals get, flooded with emotions. Everyone wants to help. Everyone wants to push forward. Everyone wants to contribute. But I think your role as a leader in those kind of situations is to keep a cool head, to, follow the plan. You've been preparing for this, and you've been refining, you've been practicing, trust your gut, trust your instinct, trust your preparedness, trust your training, and trust your experience. And so I think a big part of this situation is to manage the people, to manage the perception, to manage the narrative, to manage emotions and, those of people around you, but obviously yours as well. And, you have to also, portray yourself in a confident, calm manner so that people will trust that you are the right person for to handle the task and sort of walk the talk. So for me, you do need to have, a cool head and, take a bit of distance, look at things, from outside in and follow your experience, follow your process. And, more often than not, you end up on the right side of it at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think to add to what Alex said, and he's nailed it, by the way, but communication skills are priceless, right? And being transparent with your team, making things, being clear with them and living by a certain set of values and ethics. Because, we're the good guys here, right? We are trying to protect companies. We're trying to solve problems and you've got to live by those standards. You've got to set standards and you've got to show your team that you demonstrate them. It's not just playing lip service to those kind of ethics and values that you have. So being communicative, always involving your team, making them feel part of the family, part of the journey, and being respectful of them, listening to them and taking their feedback seriously. I think those are all keys of effective leadership to my mind.
And in terms of yourself, obviously, I would imagine there's been a lot of challenges that you've both faced as leaders. Maybe some examples of some of the standout situations, within the boundaries of obviously what you can divulge and what you did to sort of overcome them.
Yeah, well, I'll start with that one then. And look, I find the biggest challenges I face as a leader are things that are beyond my control, right? There's external factors that, that come out of nowhere that, can affect the whole working environment, the company that you're working for, the organization that you're working for. I mean, I'll give you examples. I mean, company ownership can suddenly change. I've been through that before where, the whole dynamic has completely changed with different ownership, new leadership. Brand new leaders coming in can completely change the way a company operates and how you are able to operate as a leader of your own team or own group. And what I've seen more recently as well, of course, operating in this region is geopolitics. These are, completely outside of my control, what's going on in the world. And yet, it does have an impact on how and where you're able to operate. I'm a great believer. Look, we're here to help companies to protect themselves, organizations, individuals, and that should be regardless of which location they're in or which country they're from. And it's really about helping people. But sometimes, obviously, geopolitics can get in the way. But I think the way to overcome this, to your point, is just by being dynamic, quite simply. One of the reasons I moved to Theos is because we are Asia focused and we're able to navigate a lot of the thorny political issues that exist in the world currently and provide best service to our clients within the region. So I think, being dynamic, adapting quickly, and, just responding quickly to external events that you really have no control over.
Yeah, I think on my end, one challenge that we've sort of been facing, since starting the company has always been, first of all, looking for talent and being able to service the demand that we're receiving. We are people intensive type of practice and type of company, and trying to stay focused on what we want to be excellent at. You'd always get requests or individuals or companies approaching you because you work with them on some project in the past, or you've been referred by a common contact. And perhaps it was in a previous job or in a previous role where you did some very specific work, and they're quite interested in you coming back and do that again. And obviously the temptation is to help. We're a service company. It's in our nature to try to help. And the natural sort of reaction is, yeah, sure, I would love to come and help you out with this piece of work or with this challenge that you're facing. And particularly at the onset of starting a company, you tend to say yes to anything just to get the company going. And I think we did that quite a bit at the beginning, and probably a bit too much. We had to go through the discipline eventually of sort of stopping entertaining requests that are a little bit outside of what we really want to be great at. We need to choose our battles and really focus on where we want to excel, so that we progress and we become the force to reckon with, I guess, in the region on that area. And that balance between wanting to help, obviously there's a bit of the business context in the background. You do want to get business, obviously, but having the discipline and stay focused on the objective, which was build this practice, build that practice, the monitoring and response, the offensive and testing part. And yes, learning to say no is difficult in I guess in any situation, but particularly when you're trying to build a company and you're in a service business, and you tend to just want to help.
Just before we move on to our next topic, are there any other strategies that you think the CISOs and C-suite leaders should be implementing in order to proactively address and mitigate the swathe of emerging cyber threats out there? Maybe Alex, answer this one first.
Sure. Well, I think the first thing is to really get a good understanding of what those threats are and how they are evolving. And, particularly these days, and, there's obviously a lot of talk about AI and the new tools and the new possibilities out there. And, attackers and criminal groups are extremely creative, and, it's a little bit of a cat and mouse game. And, you do need to obviously keep yourself abreast of what is happening, whether through obviously doing your own research, consuming to some form of threat intelligence, sharing with industry peers, attending conferences or events, perhaps joining some communities, some groups. And I guess, it has to go both ways. Something really important is, to share intelligence, not just consume it. Do your own part in enhancing, the common knowledge of your peers, of the industry, of what is happening. But obviously you cannot protect against threats and events if you're not aware that they are out there and that they are, potentially or likely to come at you eventually. So I think for me, this is one of the fundamental, approach that you must take. Understand the landscape, understand the threats that are currently, targeting your industry, targeting your peers, targeting your region. Whether it's criminals, we talk always about nation states, but they're just one piece, right? Whether it's tendencies on internal users and insider risks, whether it's regulatory landscape, which you could consider that a bit of a threat, or at least it's something you have to account as part of your cyber efforts, I guess. But yeah, you have to be aware, I guess. Situational awareness is really critical in effectively getting you ready.
Surge advice.
Yeah, I think Alex has said it very well indeed. And I always refer to this as criminal ingenuity, right? I've dealt with it my whole career. any kind of new technology, criminals will find a way to subvert it and to use that technology to their advantage, so to speak. And I think the old adage of to catch a thief, you have to think like a thief applies just as well in this world. And CISOs need to be thinking of technologies that are being used and implemented within the company, how a bad guy could use those same technologies against them. And we're seeing, obviously, as a common example, the prevalence of deep fake videos being used in fraud, and it's just a great technology that's being abused, and criminals are seizing upon the opportunity to make money and to commit fraud against the victims. So look, at the end of the day, it's education, it's knowing what's out there and having that mindset of understanding, hey, this technology may be great for this, but how could it be used for evil as well?
Paul, I totally agree with you. Having an adversary mindset is very important. And on that subject, I'm sure we can all agree, to enhance cyber resilience, we need to adopt innovation, especially to address these emerging and advanced threats. So in terms of digital forensics and instant response, as well as managed threat detection and offensive security, Paul, what are the most effective strategies for combating ransomware attacks, as well as advanced persistent threats?
Yeah, so look, I'm going to go back to a point I made earlier, which is having the right people. So not relying on just on the tech. The tech is important, right? The tech, the tools, especially. I'll speak from a DFI perspective, and Alex perhaps speak from a monitoring perspective. But from a DFIR perspective, look, there's so much debate about push button forensics. Using tools without really understanding what's going on under the hood. And, just pushing buttons to try and get answers from data that's being collected as part of an incident or part of an investigation. And I'm a great believer in that, people need to, or the humans behind the keyboard need to understand what is actually happening here. What are these tools actually doing? What are they telling us? What is it missing? What else should I be looking at in addition to what the tools are giving me? And there's the challenge, you see, because there's too few people who are good at understanding, the realities of unraveling the complex incidents, what really occurred, how the attackers got in, which system was patient zero, in other words, the first one to be breached, and how did the attackers move once they're in the network, etc. All these kind of challenges. And it needs a very innovative and investigative mindset on the part of the human to actually understand all of this. And all too often I just see people in this industry just relying on tools and hoping that it will give them the answers without having that ability to look at other elements, other components, and factor them all in together to get the proper answers that's needed in an investigation. I think, Alex, you've probably got more views on this in terms of strategy for the MTDR.
Yeah, well, actually, picking on what you just said and the over-reliance on tools, I think that we've been, and if we sort of circle back a bit on the AI part and all these, the technologies and what we see right now, we have been relying on some of those technologies in sort of black box approach. There's an alert that comes out, but we don't really know why or what triggered it or what model was applied, or, we cannot make the mistake of not understanding what can and cannot be identified, or we are at the risk of having a bit of a false sense of security. And whether it's in coverage of the tool or the capability of the tool, or whether it's, again, ingenuity of an attacker who understands, that person actually understands how the tool works and therefore is able to bypass it. And if you're on your end, you don't have that same, or better level of understanding of how the tech works, then, obviously you are at a disadvantage. But I think aside from the people, obviously the process part, we always, say technology, people, and process. And we talked a bit earlier about preparedness and trusting your process, trusting your training, trusting your playbooks and, your procedures. And again, I think they are equally as important as the people and as the tech, and all of that forms a sort of virtual circle. And you cannot be successful without that either. And I think the opportunity we have right now with the advancement in the technology and, new products and, new use cases for LLMs and Gen AI, etc., is rather to augment people's capabilities, to make them more efficient, to make them faster, to sort of remove some of the mundane parts of the job sometimes, and sort of using it as an assistant, as an enhancement, but not, as the sole feature, the sole means of, identifying or investigating a threat. One example of this, just to be quite, very pragmatic, in the context of investigations, one of the steps, at the onset when we investigate an alarm or an incident is to try to if possible, find signs of compromise, find, potential signs of what tools are being used, what techniques, what TTPs we would refer them to are being used, and, perhaps attribute, to a certain group or a certain, adversary group. And as an investigator in a security operation center, you'd sometimes find yourself then, once you have this piece of information, looking for signs of that tool within the environment of the organization. And before GenAI, became readily available, our analysts used to basically put all these queries, and they call sort of threat hunting queries. They used to put them together manually. And technically what it means is writing a piece of code that is meant to be identifying through, all the tool set, all the data that you have, all the ways that tool could be identified on a server, on a machine, or on a cloud. That took quite a while. Obviously, you have pre-canned or, template for these queries, but, they can take, 30 minutes, an hour before they actually work, before the syntax is correct, before they can find all the different variations of the tool. Now, with access to, generally, GenAI type of tools, we are able to generate those queries in seconds. And what it means is, obviously the individual doing the investigation is still the one sort of following the logic of, looking for this tool, understanding who is the attacker, who is the adversary behind it, and what's the right next step. But the sort of mundane and bit of tedious part of putting together that query, testing it, executing it, is now shortened from an hour to literally a couple of seconds. And it has tons of benefits. Number one, obviously you investigate and respond faster. Number two, you probably are more comprehensive in the way you are identifying those signs, because, perhaps if it was sort of developed manually, you may have found, 3, 4, 5 different ways of identifying the tool. But actually, through the GenAI sort of generation, we identify probably 10, 20 different ways to find that tool. So the coverage is a lot broader. And I think the last part is, for the individual himself or herself, having access to this technology means that the job is sort of, more interesting. I don't want to say funnier, because that's not the right term, but, you remove the tedious part, the interesting bit in this investigation is progressing, is finding what's happening, is containing it. And, it really helps on the, the morale, when you are investigating on, hours on and or in the middle of the night or on weekends. It helps you, progress faster. It helps individuals be more focused on the task at hand, be more effective. And, overall, I think, we talked about leading people earlier. That's one great way to inspire and, to attract talent, to retain talent, to free them up to go and do, better work, better things with their time. And so, we see tons of benefits with these technologies, but they have to be, supporting individuals, not replacing individuals, in my opinion.
No, that's brilliant. And Paul, from your perspective, what are the challenges organizations perhaps are facing when they're working towards integrating offensive security? And without disclosing too much, could you share with us a success story of offensive security implementation?
Yeah, so look, and when we're talking about collaboration or integration with different functions, I'm a great believer in this. A great believer in convergence of skill sets, because to Alex's point just a moment ago, it's a way of motivating and retaining talent by getting them involved or learning new things outside of their day-to-day, perhaps, box of work that they're normally doing. And certainly, obviously my background is investigation, so speaking from that angle, when we have the offensive security teams just doing pen testing, it's kind of a waste, in my opinion, right? We need to get them involved as well sometimes with the investigations, because who better to understand the hackers' techniques and methodologies than the ethical hackers themselves, right? So, recently Theos, as a company, when I joined, we've expanded from just being a protect and offense-based company, in other words, monitoring security and testing security. But we now also have the respond capability that I've brought in. And with that comes exciting opportunities for, those in the pen testing field to get involved in investigations, to see how hackers are really operating in the real world, when it's part of an investigation, and helping to solve a mystery, if you like. And certainly I've seen, to your point about examples, we've had cases in the past where the investigators struggled trying to work out what the hell the attacker had done, and only for an ethical hacker to come in and say, well, that's what they did. This is how they did it. This are the tools they used because we use it in our red teaming, and that's how they succeeded. And all of a sudden, the whole matter is kind of solved. So as I say, I'm a great believer in these convergences of skill sets. And to Alex's point, as I say, it really motivates the team because they want to learn more. They want to grow in their careers. And ultimately, if they want to become a CISO, as Alex's original goal was, then perhaps they, do need exposure to, parts of cybersecurity beyond their core focus. And that helps them to become well-rounded and much better in the cybersecurity field. So, yeah, great believer. I mean, it's sort of long and off on a tangent a little bit there. But, yeah, that's, as I say, something that's very close to me, encouraging this kind of convergence of skill sets.
Look, balancing that innovation with security. We've touched on this a little here with the many emerging technologies that are going on. As this technology rapidly evolves, we know more and more organizations have got big choices to make in terms of balancing that innovation. And what do you think, and how do you think innovation is playing a role in shaping leadership in the cybersecurity field?
I'll try to give it a go. I think that from a leadership perspective, we're excited about the potential, obviously. And, we want to test, we want to experiment. And, we're a relatively, sort of small and agile firm. And, we do like to go and experiment. And through engagements as well, we have the opportunity to actually test in the field. Some of those new tools or techniques. We are about to conduct a red team where that is going to involve deepfakes, for example. So extremely interesting, and we are fortunate to have the ability to to test and to experiment this way. But I think, as with every tech, you need to do it in a controlled manner. You need to set guidelines. You need to set some. We like to be driven by principles rather than rules at Theos, and to empower individuals, give them room to innovate, give them room to try, but obviously within certain guardrails. And I think that from a leadership perspective, there is no doubt that the majority of our team, they want to try these tools, they want to experiment. And if you start by saying no, this is probably going to be counterproductive. So you need to show support, but obviously to identify the risks, to do this in a controlled manner. And to also apply the guardrails to yourself, by the way. Again, leading by example is fundamental. But allow that innovation and doing in a controlled manner, doing with trusting your folks, and obviously, keep an eye on the outcomes and see if what's the potential to roll them out a bit more broadly later on.
Yeah. So to add to what Alex said, look, if you're a leader in cybersecurity and you're not innovating, you won't be a leader in cybersecurity for very long. Simple as that, right? Cybersecurity just moves too quickly, and you have to innovate. You have to be creative. You have to get ahead, stay ahead of the criminal community, the attackers, because they are doing it constantly. So if you just rely on old methodologies and you're not innovating, not changing, not keeping pace, then you're doomed to fail, in my opinion. That's my short and simple answer on that one.
And look, businesses need to innovate responsibly, and need to maintain the highest level of security measures. But within this sort of, what is increasingly highly, regulatory environments and scrutiny, what advice can you give businesses within this kind of their operations?
In our region, in APAC, APAC being a rather fragmented region, there is unfortunately basically one flavor of regulatory framework pretty much per country around here. And it is extremely complicated and difficult for businesses to keep up. And, regulatory frameworks in Hong Kong are different to Singapore, they're different to Korea, they're different to the Philippines, they're different to Malaysia. Obviously, you identify trends, and there are certain directions that pretty much regulators eventually tend to follow. But the pace, the timings, the focus is obviously different. You will always sort of have the usual suspects in the region sort of trying to lead the charge or leading the charge, but then very localized special flavors, so to speak. Some countries insist really much on privacy, some insist really much on protecting internet access. Some are more, sensitive to geopolitics and, the type of technology you're allowed or not allowed to use. So there's interesting complexities in this region, and navigating it is quite complex, I have to say. But obviously right now, the talk of the town is, AI everything. So I think we are seeing, experimentations of how to best, or what are the latest and greatest ideas on, how to use AI to better protect, better detect, better respond, better assess, better test, better identify confidential data, better tag, our sort of risk rate, conversations, individuals, devices.
Yeah, just to add to that, I mean, I see the dynamics in our region changing rapidly, right? And, the regulatory scrutiny is the laws, the regulations are there. The only thing I would say is the stick really isn't there. In Europe, it's been very effective, for example, at policing GDPR. But in Asia, I think the authorities have brought in laws and rules, and for the most part, I mean, there are certain exceptions, have brought in laws and rules, but are unable or incapable of enforcing them or investigating them properly. So the stick is not really there to drive companies to be better at protecting their customer data, their client information, etc. But I think that will change as time goes by across our region. But to your other point about the innovation, I think I'm seeing more that it's business driving innovation, and we've got the age-old battle of security trying to make sure that the business is not implementing new technologies that are putting the firm at risk. And it's always that challenge. Business wants to move ahead, wants to bring in AI, wants to make everything with bells and whistles to attract more customers. And then the security team are going, hang on a minute, we've got to slow down. We've got to test this. We've got to make sure it's, it's responsible and it fits in with our security profile. And we do see that a lot. So I would say it's more about the business risks of driving innovation rather than the security teams themselves rushing to bring in new innovations. Because I think most of the money invested anyway in innovation is designed towards business. It's designed towards making money. It's not really designed towards security. So although we could leverage AI in so many different ways for assisting investigations and security, I think it's a lower sort of profile than the innovations that are there driving, big business, self-driving cars, all the kind of the good stuff that we see.
No, most definitely. And we all know achieving a strong cyber culture is essential for organizations, especially those that want to have a robust level of resilience and risk management. Some of the research that we've looked at most recently suggests that those with a strong cybersecurity culture and a higher level of maturity suffer up to 60% less breaches and incidents. And I know we've touched on a few methods and steps that leaders can take to ensure that they cultivate a positive cyber culture internally. But what other steps can leaders take, Paul, and how can they measure the effectiveness?
Yeah, look, this is a great question. It's one that I love, actually, this question, because, at the end of the day, most of the risks in an organization are through the human, right? As the attacks generally originate by tricking a human, socially engineering a human into doing something that opens the door, if you like, for a firm. So education is key. And the most successful firms, organizations who combat this is not just through having educational programs, these compliance programs where you run through a bunch of slides and answer a few questions and then forget it all. It's more about continuous engagement with the staff, treating them as part of the security team, not the first line of defense rather than being the weakest link. And that starts from the top. So all good security, it really starts from the top. And those leaders who actually walk the walk and, set the example are far better protected, because employees, like it or not, when you get an email from the cybersecurity team or the IT team or whoever it might be about, protect your passwords, whatever it might be, blah, 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 tend to delete or forget it, right? You get a message from the CEO or, somebody at the top, then employees generally pay attention, right? So I always remember a story of a company a while back where the CEO, it was a he, so himself, screenshotted whenever he got a compelling phishing email that he either almost clicked on or was thinking about clicking on or did click on. And he sent it around to the employees saying, look what I just got. I almost clicked on this. Would you guys have clicked on this as well? And just kind of realize, oh, hey, our CEO is vulnerable to this as well. He's thinking about this, and it gets people in the right mindset of thinking about, what their own personal responsibilities are. And they're far more likely to pay attention to, as I said, to an email from the CEO than they are to somebody from the IT team. So, yeah, I think it all starts at the top, and those with a culture where they take it seriously at the top, are going to be better protected. And look, in the region, I'm seeing this is definitely improving. So one of my key roles in my position nowadays is to be an advisor to boards and executive committees, right? And I do quite a lot of board briefings and help executives to understand the risks better and how they can be better at helping their firms or organizations to be more secure. And that's encouraging to me, right? A few years ago, there was no interest in having cyber security on the agenda at the board, but now it is. And that's changing the way that firms look at security, right? It starts from the top, and that definitely helps. So that's my view on this. And as I say, it's kind of a pet topic of mine because I do a lot of these board briefings, and, I'm seeing this change in senior folks taking it more seriously.
And look, we're going to talk a little bit about the future of cybersecurity startups. I mean, we know that the startup ecosystem is evolving at a rate of knots. There's so many new companies now who are bringing innovative solutions to the market, as we've touched on. And I think there's talk of a region around 30 billion in investment just within the last 12 months alone. What emerging trends and technologies do you guys see as pivotal for the next generation of cybersecurity startups, Alex?
So I'm not surprised that, the numbers that you're sharing, given the fact that, right now the sort of Pandora's box been open, and it's, we all want to see what's going to be the latest and the next great thing. And I think similarly internally, the example of using, Gen AI for threat hunting queries, at our own level, we are experimenting and we are trying to find use cases where we think that, those technologies can add value. And certainly in the startup space, obviously you have a tendency to see companies trying to solve big problems or coming with really, disrupting ideas. I think for me, the important part is to, not try to find out what can I use AI for, but rather what's the problem I'm trying to solve, and, not the other way around. And I think we do have, challenges right now that are extremely complicated and extremely difficult to solve. We talked about deepfake, how to identify how to help an individual, realize that perhaps they're on a Teams call or a Zoom call with someone who's actually using a technology, changing their face. We have conversations with organizations who are trying to determine how to detect the use of deepfake in a KYC process when individuals on board onto applications, whether it's on a cryptocurrency exchange, the one where you take your picture and, with your ID type of thing, or on board on payment applications. We use quite a lot of these in Asia. And, organizations are trying to determine, today with just a copy of an ID, you could basically generate, a live representation of an individual. If you're deploying or rolling out, some mobile app with enrollment features, how do you prevent, someone from using deepfake to enroll themselves? So I think, sort of the AI, combating the AI type is certainly an area that, we're quite excited to see what happens next.
Yeah. So look, I think what Alex has said is absolutely spot on. But I think, certainly as a startup, you got to focus, right? You try not to, eat the elephant, as the expression goes, focus on something and do it really well, whether it's a product you're bringing out or whether it's a consulting service, in cyber. Focus on something that's niche, that's needed, do it well, build a reputation, and then, as I say, build on that from there. Because I think we see a lot of startups fail because they try to be too ambitious, they try to take on too much, they try to, solve all the world's problems rather than focusing on being excellent at something specific. And that would be the advice I would give to any startup. Just be good, focus, and be the best you can be at a certain area.
Yeah, and I think some good advice for many startups who are looking to navigate a very competitive landscape with us. So thanks, guys. And look, just to sort of come towards the back end of the episode, you've built and led diverse teams and you've driven innovation that's enabled transformation. Paul, what would you say are the most underestimated risks within cybersecurity today? What common mistakes should startups avoid in their early strategies?
Yeah, I think, over-reliance on tools, we've touched on this already, right? Over-reliance on tools is the biggest mistake you see time and again, right, with startups, etc. And, it's elementary mistakes that are being made, basics. And I think, well, if we're talking about, startups in terms of their own cybersecurity, then it's the foundational things. It's the cyber hygiene that gets them every time. It's not taking care of the basics. And as I said, sometimes they'll buy into security tools where they think it solved their problem. but they don't really know how to use them, and they're not, even when the tools are effective, they're not realizing that they've detected an incident and they're unable to respond to them. So I think, yeah, these are the key things that I've seen in terms of mistakes made. Alex?
Yeah, I think so. I would have echoed the foundational, type of security that, often we jump to the, sort of the shiny tool and technology and the promise of, solving, with a silver bullet type of approach. But we skip the part of, understanding what assets, you have, understanding your risk profile, understanding who is responsible for what. It's a little bit less sexy, so to speak, but it is where you are expected to start when you really want to try to understand, your risk profile and where to focus your efforts. I think the other, aside from that, the area I would perhaps point out is trying to reinvent the wheel. And, we, particularly for smaller firms, or when you are at the beginning of your, or, throughout your transformation journey in cyber, you'll be faced with the choice and the decision of, building in-house or leveraging capabilities externally. And it's an interesting balancing act, because obviously, you want to have everything in-house, and, you want to own it, the capability, you want to be resilient, you want to, not having to rely on an external party. But the reality is, and obviously I'm a bit biased on this, but, the reality is, many of these external parties, they are hyper specialized in a certain area. And it allows them to, build capabilities, retain talents, develop experience, get access to tools, get access to intelligence that, for many organizations is just, too far, or it would take them, way too long to get to that sort of maturity. So I think, leveraging capabilities that are out there to be able to move a lot faster is certainly something I would, generally encourage, organizations to consider. Obviously, it's up to them which areas they think is more strategic to be, relying on a partner rather than building themselves. But I think, capability, time, being able to have a, protect, controls or sort of protections or access to talent in a much, much faster way, and in a much higher qualitative, perhaps way as well, is definitely something to consider. Because at the end of the day, that lowers your security, risk quite significantly.
So for founders that are perhaps listening to today's show, Alex, how effective and how critical is founder-led sales?
It's a tricky one. As a founder, you'll be, I would think, you'll always be sort of the, the number one sales in your company, whether it's actually sort of selling or just promoting, advocating, sharing your journey and trying to embark everyone on your, everyone with you. But actually, I think that founder-led sales it's a position that's extremely difficult to get out of, and something I've experienced this to be one of my biggest challenge, because, no one will ever, I think, know the inside of the company as much as I do, because obviously I built it, from the ground up. But we talked about leadership earlier, and, you have to let things go. And, perhaps at the beginning, it may be done in a different way. It may be done in in different flavors that perhaps you would have done differently. But you have to trust the people that you bring in. You have to trust the people that you surround yourself with. And, the example of Paul, stepping down as CEO in my case is obviously not an easy decision. And I have to say that's probably the question I get the most is why? Why did you step down as CEO? Why did you hire someone to actually lead the company where, you've been leading it all these years? And my answer is that, this is the right thing for the company. I've taken it to a certain point, and, now we are in a position to be able to surround ourselves with more talent and more leadership and individuals who bring experience, ideas, and that we don't have today. And we have to empower them and trust them. And I have to say, I'm happier than ever. It's going great, touch wood. But it was a big decision. And, I also learned, obviously, to accept that decision and just to make the most of it. So I'm happier than ever. So for founders who are still in the founder-led sales type of model, it is difficult to let things go and to trust others with something that you've built. But you have it within yourself. You have to go through the process. And when you're ready, obviously, everyone take their own time. But when the time is right, you'll know, and just trust your instinct and trust the people around you.
That's brilliant. Appreciate you sharing there. And Paul, from your perspective, obviously you've been involved with a number of global organizations, scaling them and helping them reach sort of new heights. How would you sort of briefly and best describe high performance?
Oh, that's a great question. Look, before I talk about that, I'd just like to echo what Alex mentioned about, having to step back, because that's been the hardest part for me as well. Because, just like you, Alex, you've stepped away from the CEO role. I've stepped into a CEO role from being from being a practitioner and client facing. And now I have to trust the team. And we're bringing, as Alex said, we've got great people that are running the show in terms of our delivery. And I have to step back and look after the company and the growth, right? So it's been the biggest challenge, I think, for both me and Alex, but the best thing for our clients, because we're both practitioners. We understand what they need. We've been on both sides of the table. So we know exactly what to bring to the company to help our clients best. But yeah, to your point, actually, I've forgotten the question now. What was it again, Warren? Can you just repeat that?
Yeah, so how would you best describe or define high performance?
Oh yeah, so that's a difficult one. So I would say passion, right? A passion for the subject, and just look. A lot of people come to us for jobs, and they've got XYZ qualification, and they've got this so background, whatever background. And what we look for, both myself and Alex, is someone who lives and breathes this stuff. And high performance to me is somebody who goes above and beyond, right? They don't just switch off at 5 o'clock, and they continuous learning. They have the passion. So not only are they able to deliver on their projects, but they're able to improve themselves and keep improving themselves and pushing themselves higher. And I've been so fortunate to work with many high-performing teams like this, where I'm just astounded by the self-motivation and drive of the teams and all that they brought to the table. And I'll be so proud to lead those teams and to help them in their journey. And yeah, for me, high performance is really, certainly in our niche sort of field that we operate in, it's passion. It's having that energy, and it's having that ability to keep climbing higher and higher in terms of capability.
Yeah, I think maybe just to add on as well, one of the key process or key sort of approach that we've been adopting when it comes to talent is really to look for values and culture alignment in the individuals we bring on board. So obviously we look for passion, and Paul talked about that. But the other values, that we are really, focused on, innovation is extremely important for us. Integrity is important. Striving for excellence is important. And our fifth one is about people. It's about caring for people. It's about having that emotional intelligence and having that realization that on the other side of a keyboard and an email, it's another person, right? And we're in the people business more than the tech business, I think. And as part of our hiring process, we do culture interviews, for example, where, the sole purpose of that conversation is to understand alignment to values, is to understand aspirations, is to understand personality. And we've been told many times that, this is not common practice, but, usually individuals leave this call or these conversations with very interesting ideas in their head. And, the feedback sometimes is, I've never been asked these questions in interviews before. That's really interesting. And it gets them to think. And generally we had situations where maybe the alignment was a little bit, not perfect, but, generally this has proven to be a very interesting approach and very successful for us. We get a team that's extremely tight, extremely motivating, and extremely aligned to what we're trying to do, driven by values as opposed to be driven by rules. And yeah, that has been very effective for us.
100%.
It's clear that, people cultural fit is vital for you guys. Look, could you please share a little bit more about Theos Cyber and your journey, going forward, and I suppose importantly, your purpose and vision, just a bit of an overview of the business for our audience. I'll go with obviously Alex first.
Sure. Well, our purpose as a company is really to work with organizations and focus on three key things in the approach. Number one is to be proactive. We see way too often, security programs or situations where, organizations are on the back foot. They keep responding to events, and they don't have the opportunity to really look ahead, prepare themselves, and anticipate what is next to happen. So for us, first of all, we want to be really proactive when it comes to helping, bringing solutions, bringing capabilities, sharing information and threats. Second is really to be intelligence driven. We talked about understanding the landscape and the adversaries. For us, we consume enormous amounts of threat intelligence. And what it allows us to do is really anticipate, really understand what happens, and be able to inform organizations on, what they should be focusing on, where should they pay attention to, because this is likely where the next, event of interest is going to come up. And I think the third one for us really in terms of approach is speed. And, if you've been working in large organizations, it takes, 3 months to get an approval for something. I think that for us, we've always wanted to build a company and operate in a way that's extremely fast and agile, whether it's decision making, whether it's starting a project, whether it's the SLAs on monitoring and response or mobilizing a forensic experts. We really put the emphasis on speed and being able to respond really quickly. I think research on the threat intelligence would say that the breakout time, which is the moment from the time an attacker gets a foothold until the moment where data is exfiltrated, is generally 61 minutes on average. So your time to respond, your time to mobilize, your time to contain and really to step in has to be faster than 61 minutes. And for us, it means that decision-making, tools, process, people, the whole operation, the whole company has to operate at that sort of speed. And I think that this has proven to be really differentiating for us. Clients and the companies we work with really understand and appreciate, how fast we operate. And that makes a big difference for them. So I think from an approach perspective and, how we differ, on whether it's the offensive side, whether it's the monitoring response, and now the DFIR, those three criteria are really fundamental to the way we operate.
And I love the rule of three as well. Both me and Alex love that rule of three. And I think, to add to this, obviously I've come in to help Alex and the company to take it to the next level. And as part of that, we've obviously got three core service lines, and all of our catalog of services either fit under those three buckets or an amalgamation of those buckets, which is the offense, testing security, which is the defense, which is protecting and monitoring, and is the response. And as Alex said, we have to be quick, we have to be fast, we have to be effective. So, those three core pillars are what Theos is built on, and it's what we're going to be, moving towards in the future to enhance and to continue to expand those and improve those functions. But the other rule of three, I guess, is at the end of the day, my role as CEO is to attract more business, is to resonate with clients, give them what they want, and again, simplifying things, right? They're looking for trust, right? We brought in some of the biggest names in Asia. They're proven, they've got the experience, they've got absolute trust in them, to deliver properly to the clients. And then you got the quality. So trust, quality is a given, right? You don't want to hire a company that doesn't have quality, right? In the cyberspace. And again, we've got all the certs, we've got all the credentials, we've got all the proven processes and technologies in place that, provide that quality. And the third one is value, right? We're operating in strange economic times, right? And companies want to ensure that their investments in security are well spent and that they get value for their investments. And again, we're proud of the way we operate. We provide great value in our services to our clients. So those are the three pillars that, from a high level, the CEO level, that really resonate when we talk to clients. And then we can start drilling into the specifics, the technology, once they realize that those core things are all in place.
Oh, that's brilliant. And I know yourself and Alex are developing your own podcast. What's the motivation there?
That's a great question, because actually I get asked that a lot. I'd never had any intention to dabble into your world of podcasting, but I've got a very close friend who runs a company that does events in Dubai in the Middle East. And he's just built a podcast studio because obviously it's a growing field, and he's very professional. He's a former, television producer, etc. And he gave me a call one day and said, "Hey, just starting a podcast studio, and we need some exemplars, and we want to, we find your topics really interesting, and would you be interested in running a series of podcasts with us?" And the timing was perfect. I'd just taken up this new role with Theos and said to Alex, "Hey, do you fancy it?" And we couldn't come up with an idea. We're calling it Theos Cyber Champagne Cyber. It's due to be released. Actually, it was going to go out this week, but we've decided to make sure everything's in place, and we're going to push it out next week, the first episode. But our intention is to, me as host, and to talk to interesting characters, each with a different perspective on our Asia Pacific region in cybersecurity. And For example, the first episode was just me and Alex, right, talking about our story and a little bit similar to what we talked about today, I guess, but also talking to individuals who have perspectives on moving between the public and private sector and what it's like, the differences, recruitment, it's your industry, what the challenges are in Asia Pacific around recruitment, etc. Looking at the legal implications, each episode will focus on a different topic. So I just think it's also giving back a little bit to the community. I speak at a lot of conferences, so does Alex, and it's our way of contributing back, just like being on this podcast, trying to share our experiences and know-how a little bit. And at the end of the day, it's a time cost, but it's a valuable time cost, I think, and it's a good way of giving back.
Well, from our perspective, from the founder perspective, the last 5-6 years was about building solid foundations. It was about building the premise of a brand, getting recognition, and being in a position where we could eventually be able to bring really high-end top talent. And we got this far. The next stage is really to become a clear, defined leader in the region when it comes to those core capabilities. And that's really what the focus is going to be. Stay an independent firm in APAC, focused on clients in understanding the landscape here, being able to mobilize, respond, and move really quickly around those locations, and continue to provide great value to clients.
Commend you on that and look forward to it.
Well, Richard, best of luck with it. And look, obviously, I think the future is certainly secure with Theos, with two such excellent leaders at the helm. What does the future hold for you both going forward?
Yeah, and I think for me, it's about leaving a legacy as well at this stage of my career, right? I've done a lot in my career and I've been privileged and very proud to have done what I've done. But here's an opportunity now. I love Asia, right? I've been living here apart from the time, few years I spent in New York with JP Morgan. I've lived basically my whole adult life out in Asia, and I love being here. And what I found is that we're underserved in Asia. All the big cyber companies tend to be headquartered in the US or Europe, Israel or whatever. And this is our opportunity to build a real competitor or a real challenger to those companies that is Asia focused. And also, the talent in Asia is still a little, in my experience, is somewhat immature compared to the West, perhaps. And we are proud to be helping to evolve that talent and to grow it here, the local talent, and see them as future leaders in our region. And as I said, the clients like this. They want in Asia, they're very much people, if you know what I mean. They want to meet you in person. They like the fact that you're just around the corner, and they can talk to you in person as well as over Zoom, etc. And I think, just as I said at the beginning, leaving a legacy is important to me at this stage of my career. Building something special, building something sustainable, something that's there to be, something that's there for the long term and to be, a big name in Asia.
Amazing. Well, look, we wish you both the very, very best of luck, and we'd like to say a huge thank you for your time today. I'm sure the community, all our listeners, will have found a huge amount of value in today's episode. If anyone wants to continue the discussion for more sustained engagement, we invite you to join the Secure Cyber Connect community, where we're going to be offering a range of collaborative solutions to both technology and security professionals, no cost. As always, these include expansive community access, cross-sector mutual mentoring programs, weekly online networking sessions, and a range of exclusive interviews, such as this, panel discussions and masterclasses coming later in the year. If people want to learn more and gain access to the secure community and all of our initiatives, please visit allthews.secure-recruitment.com/cyber-connect/.